Wimbledon, the most iconic event in tennis and without a doubt the most prestigious Grand Slam on the calendar. Hundreds of players and thousands of fans descend onto the perfectly maintained grounds for a 2-week period in the height of British summer. But it's not just Pimm strawberries and the inch-perfect grass which have made Wimbledon such a unique Grand Slam. It's also home to some of the strangest rules in sport. Rules that you won't find at any of the other Grand Slams, and yet somehow they work. From a killer hawk that patrols the skies, to a dress code so strict it banned coloured underwear, to £10,000 fines over smashed rackets, or even spectators nearly being removed for opening champagne. These rules are so strict that they even nearly ended in disqualification for Wimbledon's golden child, Roger Federer, in 2013. So these are the weird rules of Wimbledon, which just work. Wimbledon has had its iconic white dress code since it began nearly 150 years ago on July 9th, 1877. It was originally implemented as white is the colour which most conceals sweat stains, which were considered improper and unsightly. This, however, was just a tradition until 1963, when Wimbledon officially declared that competitors must be dressed in predominantly white. Throughout the 1980s, players were seen with stripes and patterns until the rules became even stricter in 1993, where coloured trimmings couldn't be wider than just a single centimetre. All garments, including headbands, socks and underwear, must be white. This hasn't always been well received. Andre Agassi, one of the best tennis players in the world at the time, boycotted Wimbledon from 1988 to 1990 as he wasn't allowed to express himself with his outfits, which, as you can see, was certainly interesting. There have been countless examples of players being caught out by these rules. Anna Kournikova had to borrow shorts from her coach in 2002 as she stepped out onto practice courts in these black shorts. Venus Williams had to change her sports bra in 2017 as it was visibly pink. Ons Jabeur was forced to change after practicing in a black t-shirt in 2023, and even Djokovic had to be granted special permission on medical grounds to wear this grey knee brace in 2024. They did relax part of the rules ever so slightly in November 2022, however. Female players are now allowed to wear dark-coloured undershorts beneath their skirts or shorts after expressing their stress playing the tournament during their menstrual cycles. This is the perfect example of a necessary change, but still managing to keep the iconic white dress code. Whilst it may be frustrating for some players, it's undeniable that it creates a sense of tradition that no other Grand Slam comes close to. The two aspects of Wimbledon which make it instantly stand out on TV is the white dress code and also the immaculate grass. But it takes months of preparation to get the grass looking this good for the start of the tournament. Since 2001, the grass used on all of the 18 championship courts is 100% perennial ryegrass, which provides a more predictable bounce and increased durability. During the winter, the grass is kept at a height of 13mm, and as spring arrives, it's trimmed down by 1mm each week until it reaches the tournament standard of 8mm. From May onwards, the courts are cut 2 to 3 times a week, but during the tournament, they are cut every single day to maintain the razor-sharp consistency. Cutting the grass isn't the only daily activity the grounds team carry out though. The moisture level and firmness of the grass are the two variables which impact the way tennis is played on it. They use a Clegg impact hammer to test the firmness of the surface. It tends to start around 170 to 200 gravities and can be as high as 250 by tournament end. This number increase translates to faster, harder and higher bouncing courts as the days go by. They try to keep the moisture at the root, which is about 50mm below the surface, to 15 to 20%. Maintenance crews also brush, roll and paint the lines daily to maintain their perfect look. In terms of the grass, wildlife can be a bit of an issue. If foxes make their way onto court, the urine can kill patches of grass. so they are kept out of the grounds with electric fencing and guard dogs. Then there is the problem of pigeons, which Wimbledon employ a killer hawk to deal with that problem, but we'll come back to that later. Once the tournament ends, the preparation for next year's tournament begins. The top layer of the courts are stripped and renewed with about 6 tons of fresh soil. Then around a ton of ryegrass seed is sown onto each court to start the next cycle. Then there are the grounds team who have to look after all of the greenery which isn't grass, of which there is Court 1's incredible living wall, Centre Court's iconic ivy, which has been growing for about 100 years, and then a further 50,000 plants and flowers. So yeah, to maintain the perfect grass and colourful grounds at Wimbledon, they have to follow many strict rules, but the end result is incredible. But because this grass takes so much maintenance, there are certain things players are not allowed to do, including respect and sportsmanlike behaviour are part of Wimbledon's core principles, and something which doesn't express either of those is smashing your racket in frustration. Not only that, but it can also damage the grass, which, as you've just learned, takes a lot of time to prepare and maintenance isn't easy. This is why players can be fined up to £10,000 for smashing their racket on court at Wimbledon. Serena Williams was on the wrong end of a fine twice for doing this. Once in 2016 after losing the first set to Christina McHale, and then again in 2019, a day before the tournament even started, on a practice court, both fines being around £8,000. Heather Watson recorded the second largest fine in Wimbledon history at the time in 2016 for jamming her racket into the grass after wasting multiple match points. Her fine of £9,043 was about a third of her total prize winnings. The most recent example was during one of the great Wimbledon finals in 2023 between Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz. Djokovic smashed his racket into the net post after losing serve in the decisive 5th set. The crowd certainly made their opinion known. He was later fined £6,117 for his behaviour. There is a way round this, however, as Andrei Rublev showed in 2024. Just smash yourself in the leg with your racket. You avoid the fines, but you do make yourself look a bit strange in the process. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you've watched matches at other Grand Slams, such as the US Open, and you may have realised how ridiculously late some of these games are played until. For example, in 2022 at the US Open, a quarter-final between Sinner and Alcaraz ended at 2:50am. In 2023, Murray vs Kokkinakis ended at 4:05am at the Australian Open, and in 2024, Djokovic vs Musetti ended at 3:07am at the French Open. These early hours in the morning are when most people physically can't keep their eyes open, never mind playing tennis at the highest level. Contrasting that, Wimbledon is the only Grand Slam to have a strict curfew, and that's 11pm. This has been in place since 2009, as Merton Council implemented it when granting Wimbledon permission for Centre Court's roof. The idea of a curfew is to balance the scale of hosting an international tennis event with the wishes of local residents, as well as making it easier and safer for spectators to find their way home. Matches must end at 11pm. If a match approaches the cut-off point, play is suspended and it will be resumed the next day. There was one exception, however, in June 2012. Andy Murray finished his match at 11:02pm because he was just one game from victory. The local authorities allowed the extra time, saying it was common sense. Overall, this is one of the rules unique to Wimbledon, which players like Coco Gauff and Iga Świątek have publicly campaigned to be implemented at other slams. Matches finishing at 4am doesn't just hurt the recovery and sleep of the players, but you have to consider the ball crew, spectators, security, commentators, journalists, and so much more, all of which might not be getting home until 5am or later, and they have less public transport options available to do so. Now this one is a small rule and it is common sense, but I had to include it as it's awfully British.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you are opening a bottle of champagne, don't do it as the player is about to serve. Thank you.
It's the most Wimbledon warning I've ever heard.
The umpire had to issue a warning to spectators to not open a bottle of champagne as a player is about to serve. Again, another small one here, and it's less of a rule but more of a weird quirk of Wimbledon. The men's trophy has a pineapple on its lid, and the most interesting part about it is there are no definitive records which explain why it's there. When the trophy was crafted in 1887, pineapples were seen as exotic, expensive luxuries in Britain and were imported at a great cost. They were only served at prestigious occasions, which is likely the reason they put one on top of the trophy, but we'll never know for sure. As I hinted at earlier, Wimbledon has a pigeon problem. The large open spaces and leftover food makes it an ideal place for them to breed. And the issue is, these pigeons aren't just unsightly, but they can damage the grass and distract players mid-match, which, as you can see, has happened on multiple occasions. So what's the solution? A hawk called Rufus. He isn't used to attack them, but his presence alone, whilst patrolling the skies, serves as a highly effective deterrent. Rufus flies each morning during the championships, clearing the skies before players and fans arrive, ensuring the court stay pigeon-free. Rufus even has his own Twitter account. I've made a video going into much more detail about Rufus the Hawk, which is linked in the description if you want to watch it after this one. But now, on to the reason Federer was nearly disqualified in 2013. We've already discussed how strict the dress code is, so you already know that the shoes worn must be white. However, that even includes the soles of these shoes, as Federer found out the hard way in 2013. He stepped out onto centre court for his first round matchup in all white attire, including white shoes, but they had a bright orange sole. These soles caught the eye of tournament officials, who warned Federer if he wore them again, he could be fined or even disqualified. Of course, he retired the shoes, which ended up with a 100% win rate, and it prompted Nike to make this advertisement. You've got to give Wimbledon credit. Their rules are strict and unique, but they show that nobody is above Wimbledon. Thank you to my members who saw this video first, and if you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button.